So what we'll cover today in our fourth Zoom session for 125 hearing disorders is we will complete our topic on inner ear disorders. So weeks 1 and 2 we did middle and outer ear disorders. Last week we started on inner ear. This week I'd like to finish that topic. And you think, my God, what else is there to cover? Well, next week and the week after we'll look at retrocochlear pathology, which is a big one in our field because that's where the HIS needs to signal a red flag, and we'll cover that more next week and the week after. And then the 7th week we're going to cover pseudohypoacusis, which is faking hearing loss. How do you find out people who fake hearing loss for financial reasons or psychological? Yes.
Why do they do that? You said
psychological reasons, feeling sorry for oneself, or getting attention, or financial. 64-year-old males, workers' comp, stuff, right? Money. So people have reasons for faking, but at any rate, what we'll do here, I'll share screen, and we'll go to our disorders. Let's see here, and pull up our notes as we've got them, and I'll scroll all the way up to where we kind of got to last week. You'll see right in the middle of your page here, noise-induced hearing loss. That's kind of where we will begin. And we'll go from noise-induced loss, sudden idiopathic deafness, which means idiot. We don't know the reason why, but people lose hearing in one ear. Then we will look at Meniere's disease, which is too much fluid, too much endolength fluid in the scala media of the cochlea, and what that does. And then we will move on to head trauma, which is a rare type of a cause of inner ear hearing loss. And look what we finish with, cochlear dead regions. And we'll just take a quick look at that, just regions of the cochlea that are completely dead. Now I'm going to take you to our PowerPoint here, and when we go in our PowerPoint notes here, we'll scroll up, and we will get to, you'll see that we covered last time typical presbycusis. And it's very important when you're thinking of typical presbycusis or any hearing loss regarding the inner ear to divide between outer and inner ear pathology. Now, you're looking at the progression of presbycusis over years. We don't need to cover that again, but there's something here. And I'm going to blow up the slide and make it a bit larger here, okay? So you can see this, because we're going to look at this next week when we look at retrocochlear pathology as well. But these are called performance index functions, PI functions, or sometimes PB, phonetically, performance intensity functions for PB words, which means phonetically balanced words. And in English, speech discrimination words. The words that are used, those single syllable words that are used in speech discrimination. Okay, as part of the hearing test, where the clinician says, say the word can, say the word tree, say the word up, that kind of stuff. Audiometry. Have you guys taken audiometry 130? Have you taken that? Audra, have you taken that too? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about here when we're talking word recognition. Now you're going to see that, look at the horizontal axis here. It just says SPL. Just call that intensity. Just forget the complexity. I just want to make it in plain English. Intensity, 0, 20, 40, 60, whatever. And then this is the percent correct. Now notice what happens when someone with normal hearing, okay? You present words at around between 10 and about 0 and 20, and they won't get many correct. See that? And you present words at 20, maybe they'll get 20%. You present words at 30, they'll start getting lots correct. You present words at 40, and look at that, the guy's getting almost all of them. Cool. Sensory neural loss. Okay, now let's look at presbycusis, or just what do you call cochlear hearing loss. And maybe you present the word soft and the guy doesn't get many. Present them louder, he starts getting more. Present louder, but then look at this, it never really reaches 100%. And that's because of hair cell damage, okay? Now look at this one here, they call this rollover. Okay? And that means you presented the words and got louder and louder, and the guy got better and better in percent. But then all of a sudden, and that's a sign of retrocochlear pathology. Okay? We'll look at that more next week. There's something to mention here, okay, regarding, whoops. Whoa, I'm losing my mind here. Hang on here. I got to go to my slide that I wanted and not way back to the beginning. I pushed the wrong button here. Down, down, down. Okay, here we are, right here. Look at this slide. Speech discrimination and sensory neural hearing loss. This is something the HIS may want to keep in mind, okay? Recall how most comfortable loudness can be artificially low in someone with sensory neural loss. For example, maybe the guy has a flat 50 decibel sensory neural loss. You would think his MCL would be like 75 or 80 because, you know, what's loudness discomfort? And I'll stop sharing for a second and just talk at you here. Pretend the guy can't hear till 50, 0 is at the bottom, 50 he can hear, and then 100 is too loud. Okay, so you'd think his MCL would be in the middle. But oftentimes, if he can't hear until 50, his MCL is like 60. And you think, that's because he's not used to wearing hearing aids. And he's always straining to hear. So his most comfortable loudness is artificially low. Like, what's a normal MCL? Around 50 to 60. Okay, his is going to be around 60, and he's got a 50 decibel hearing loss. You think that doesn't make sense. If he had a 50 decibel conductive loss, yep, it'd be way more because you got a plug in the ear. But the sensory neural loss, he may have artificially low word MCL because he's used to straining to hear. So do his word recognition at that MCL and watch it be really poor. Then do a second word recognition, a second speech discrimination. Read another list at MCL plus 10. Come in at 70 and watch the lines on his face change. All of a sudden he's doing better. Way better. And that helps to convince people of the benefits of wearing hearing aids. This is food for thought, okay? When you do a test on someone with typical presbycusis, and you'll see that and they've never worn hearing aids before, and the MCL, you're going to be thinking, wow, is that ever low? Go ahead, do word recognition at that. Mark it down, and then read another list at that claimed MCL plus 10. And watch the word recognition improve. The person will experience it, you will notice it, and experience is by far and away the best teacher. And the person's going to come away with a realization, yeah, you know what? Maybe hearing aids would help. So just food for thought. I just wanted to share that with you because it's a real common thing you're going to note with sensory neural loss. And that's what this slide is talking about right here. Okay? So now we just move on. So these are psychometric functions for various pathologies. Spondy words, don't worry about this. I'm not going to get into it. There's that rollover crap again. Enough on that. Tympanometry you recognize with otitis media. You've seen all of that. But you're also going to see something with acoustic reflexes. And we'll talk about this next week in retrocochlear pathology, but also this week. So here you go. I'm going to show you a slide. Now, what the heck are acoustic reflexes? You know what they are? I'm going to just kind of look at here, make sure we know what they are. Okay, acoustic reflexes. What is the acoustic reflex arc? Remember that? Okay, loud sound in the outer ear, middle ear, cochlea. What part of the cochlea? Inner hair cells, not outers, sending info to the 8th nerve, to the brain stem, and then the messages come from the brain stem out, the 5th cranial nerve to the tensor tympani muscle, the 7th cranial nerve to the stapedius muscle to pull. The acoustic reflex arc, ingoing, outgoing, okay? Afferent, efferent, okay, that loop. That acoustic reflex arc comes from the inner hair cells. So, I mean, it's got outer ear, middle ear, cochlea. What part of cochlea? Inner hair cells, not outers, okay? 8th nerve, brain stem, now back out. 5th cranial nerve seventh cranial nerves to what? The tensor tympani muscles and stapedius muscles. So the acoustic reflex arc covers a lot of ground, a lot of distance, okay? So looking at that carefully now, we'll share screen again. All right, so here's what they're talking about. Acoustic reflex involves the inner hair cells. So who has poor word recognition in our field? Sensory neural loss? Yeah, but what kind of sensory neural loss? Recall from last week. What kind of sensory neural loss has the worst word recognition? And if you look and review, you'll notice that there's 4 types of presbycusis, remember? Sensory, neural, strial, and mechanical. And who has the worst? Neural. Sensory means damage to the outer hair cells. Neural means damage to the inner hair cells. And remember, the inners send info to the brain. So if you've got inner hair cell pathology, you're going to have garbled word recognition because a garbled message is being sent to the brain. Always remember to separate sensory from neural. Sensory, outer hair cell pathology. Neural, inner hair cell pathology. Now you're going to get 2 people with the same degree of sensory neural loss. Maybe let's pretend you've got 2 adults with 50 decibel sensory neural loss. One has good word recognition, the other one has lousy word recognition, okay? So this, again, 2 people, same set, mild to moderate presbycusis. One's got 84%, the other one's got 50%. Now, it's illegal to cut one's head open and look inside the cochlea while they're living. But chances are, if you were able to look inside and with a tiny whatever, you'd notice that the person with the better word recognition had damage confined to the outer hair cells. The person with the poorer word recognition, his hearing loss arose from damage to both sets of hearing loss. Okay, so as soon as you've got inner hair cell pathology involved, you're going to have worse word recognition. Now, one sec here, because I'll get to you in just a second, Angela. So what hair cells get damaged first? Outers. What hair cells get damaged later? Inners. In other words, outers lead to a mild to moderate loss. Now you've got outer hair cell pathology, and now inners start dying, and now you've got a more severe loss. That's why severe hearing loss has poorer word recognition, because now inner hair cells are involved. But sometimes you'll get 2 people with the same mild to moderate loss, and their inner and outer hair cell pathology count will differ slightly. And that's what leads to the difference in word recognition. Okay, Angela, what are you going to ask?
Can you have inner hair cell damage without having outer hair cell damage? Yes,
it's rare. Yes, good question. It's rare. And it's, oh boy, there's a name for it. Auditory neuropathy. Auditory neuropathy, okay? Google it up. After this session, Google it up. Auditory neuropathy. Neuropathy. It's rare. Okay, you'll find some children born with inner hair cell pathology and the outers are fine. Guess what? They can't benefit from hearing aids. They'll often try cochlear implant on these kids. Okay, but it's rare. It's not common. This is you've asked a very good question, and there are articles written on it, but it's not common. It's usually it goes the other way. All right. Okay, so now let us share screen, and now having covered that, I think that's just something I wanted to really mention and make sure we get. Okay, so here's your typical kind of hearing loss. Outer hair cell pathology. It's not usually inner. Normal, damaged. Okay, usually it's the outers that go first, but in some people the outers and inners tend to die sort of together, even in mild to moderate loss, and that would lead to worse word recognition. Okay, so here you go. Here's your audiogram. You'll notice that you'll see SRT, right ear, left ear, MCL, right ear, left ear, speech discrimination 1, speech discrimination 2. That's why I drew that in there, because sometimes you'll find the MCL to be artificially low, and you'll want to do word recognition at that level, and then raise it up by 10 dB and do word recognition again. Okay, tympanometry, type A, B, or C, or whatever, AS, AD, and then acoustic reflexes. Were they present or not? When they presented a loud tone through the tympanometer probe, did you get acoustic reflexes? And was the sound coming from here, and was the reflex measured from there? Ipsilateral reflex. Was the sound coming from here and the reflex measured over here? Contra reflex. Okay, but enough on that. Let's look at noise-induced hearing loss. Okay, the second most common cause of hearing loss. Very important to cover because this is preventable. Okay, elderly in Africa have better hearing than elderly in the USA. And the reason why is because they have less noise pollution. Always remember the common thing to say. Our ears were meant to hear soft voices over the crackling of a fire. Maybe the roar of a lion in the distance, or a thunderclap. We were never meant to hear loud motorbikes riding by and industrial construction noises that we experience, gunshots that we hunters, you know, our ears weren't meant to handle that. And it's the same thing. We don't look at the sun because you're going to go blind, okay? But people seem to think that the ear is impervious to the ravages of noise, and it ain't, okay? Anyway, what do they say? When you're walking with your honey and your nose is kind of runny and the people think it's funny, but it's not. All right? There you go. And it's being taped, believe it or not. Maybe they'll fire me. I don't know. Anyway, here is a shot of noise-induced hearing loss. Okay? Normal hearing in the lows and mids and the sudden drop in the highs. That's the giveaway of noise-induced loss. The precipitous drop past 2000. And then look at how it improves again at 8. And our mission here in this class is to discuss why that is the case, okay? Because this is the giveaway of noise-induced hearing loss as opposed to presbycusis. And the cause of it is our friend, the outer ear canal resonance. This is the cause of it. Look at the shape of this and look at the shape of that. Okay? Marry them together because that's the cause of noise-induced loss. Look at this resonance. It adds 20 dB to what? The high frequencies right here. Okay, if you flip this upside down, you've got this. Okay, so this is nature's gift to us. This slide here is a gift to help us hear the soft consonants of speech. So I'm going to show you the picture here. Do I have it or not? Nope. Anyway, lay this thing on top of the audiogram. You could take this noise, that resonance, and lay it across, and then all of a sudden, woo, 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 up here. Okay? You're giving an extra 20 dB to the high frequencies of sound. And then they call it the half-octave shift. Look at this slide. Most industrial noises are broadband. Okay, they cover lows, mids, and highs. But when they're pushed through this resonance, okay, this acts like a filter. And it emphasizes the highs. So now the EAM, external ear canal meatus or whatever resonance, creates a band pass noise centered at 3000 hertz. You're taking a broadband and shoving it through here, so you're lifting this even more. And that some say in research that the basilar membrane, the traveling wave, the bump of the traveling wave of the cochlea is largest a half an octave higher than the frequency of the stimulus. So take this extra lift, okay, that extra stuff at 3000 hertz, shove it upward a half an octave, because they say the traveling wave is largest a half an octave higher than the frequency that caused it. So take this resonance and shove it up a little bit higher in frequency, and what do you get? That. Now it's at 4000 hertz. Okay, let's look at our notes and read what we say in our notes regarding noise-induced loss. Right here. Whoa, not there. Let's go up, Ted. Up, up. Okay, noise-induced loss. Much worse in our loud society than in Africa, so I will highlight here. can result from brief exposure to sudden loud sounds, acoustic trauma, or from constant exposure to loud sounds. And then put a star by this, TTS and PTS, temporary threshold shift or permanent threshold shift. Because if you've gone to a concert and you've heard a band playing, your ears will ring afterwards, won't they? That's called temporary threshold shift. If you had a hearing test, you'd have slightly worse hearing at 4,000 hertz. But the next morning, your tinnitus is gone, and guess what? The hairs of your hair cells are standing up again. So your ringing in the ears is gone, and your noise-induced loss is gone. That's called temporary threshold shift. But you keep exposing yourself to the noise, and it'll turn to PTS, permanent threshold shift. And so think of it like blades of grass on the lawn. You walk over it, and the blades bend. But then in the afternoon, the sun shines, they stand back up again. But you keep walking over the same path on the lawn, and now your grass blades have died. Okay? Think of that as an analogy with TTS, PTS. Noise-induced hearing loss, memorize this too. Put a star by that. What's the critical cutoff for noise? 85 dB. Okay, SPL, 85 dB. They often call it 85 dBA. And that A on the end just means they're taking that minimal audible pressure into account. The fact that the sweet spot of our hearing is between 1 to 4,000 hertz, and that we don't hear the low frequencies quite as well. And so they take that into consideration. That's called dBA. Okay, that's the fact that humans here have a smile, really, in dBSPL, and that curve is really what we call 0 dBHL on the audiogram. You'll remember from 110 acoustics. Okay, remember that stuff. Okay, so dBA means as soon as you see dBA, that's dBSPL, considering the human hearing, the fact that we hear some frequencies better than others. Okay, when you see dBA, always associated with sound level measurement. Somebody's walking around with a sound level meter measuring noise in a factory. So 85 dBA for 8 hours or more, permanent noise-induced hearing loss. As the intensity goes up by 5, the time of allowed exposure gets cut in half. So now if we'd be talking 90 dBA, you're allowed 4 hours. 95 dBA, 2 hours. 100, 1 hour. 105, half an hour. 110, 15 minutes. 120, 7 minutes. You see what I'm saying? All right, good. And then we've covered this. Why does it result in sensory neural loss, especially around 4? We've covered that. Some people say, oh, it's because of protection of the lows due to the acoustic reflexes. Yes, the acoustic reflexes occur mostly with loud, low-frequency sounds. That's true. Okay, what we're talking about here is why does noise-induced loss occur mostly around 4,000? Really, it's because of this reason right here. This is what you need to know. Okay, that's what we talked about. But these 3 lines here have been proposed by some other people as well. Okay. Some say, oh yeah, because of the low, the acoustic reflexes kick in with loud, low frequency sounds. Maybe, but that doesn't explain why the loss gets better again at 8. Okay. Poor blood supply to the hair cells between 1 and 4,000 hertz. Maybe, I don't know. More hydromechanical susceptibility due to damage due to the vector of the stapes. What the heck? Well, what that means in English is this. The footplate of the stapes is pushing in and out of the oval window into the cochlea, right? Some say when you're doing that, you're creating a current of fluid inside the cochlea that happens to really bug the hair cells at 4,000 hertz. Okay, that's what that last reason is. Maybe. The best and the most eloquent reason is because of the outer ear canal resonance that we discussed earlier. But just know that those are other proposed reasons for the fact of noise-induced loss, okay? If the case history, here's something else we should know in hearing disorders. If you find a noise-induced loss, you should always check the mid-frequencies, 3,000 and 6,000. Okay, if you see a noise-induced hearing loss, test at 3 and 6. Measure 5, because it's a precipitous drop. You've got more than 20 dB difference between your threshold at 2,000 and your thresholds at 4,000. And whenever you have more than a 20 decibel drop between adjacent speech frequencies on an audiogram, thou shalt test the mid frequencies. That's why you've got 750 here, 1,500, 3,000, and 6,000. When do you test those mid frequencies? When there's a 20 decibel drop or difference between adjacent octave frequencies on the audiogram. That's when you test mid frequencies. Okay, just FYI, I'm sure you were told this in 130 in audiometry too, but courses overlap, and it's just very good to get reinforcement on certain things just in case. All right, what do you think the SRT would be on someone with noise-induced loss? Just look at this picture here. SRT is going to agree with pure tone average, isn't it? So the SRT is going to be good, going to be pretty normal. Okay, what's word recognition going to be with noise-induced loss? Pretty good. Okay, because the person's in quiet, under headphones. He's going to get about 80 to 90% at least. Some do 100%. Okay, always remember, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. This guy's going to have trouble hearing in quiet. In noise, I should say. One-on-one, you wouldn't even recognize that the person has a hearing loss. Okay, his difficulties are going to arise in noise. When hearing becomes difficult, that's when his hearing loss is going to rear its ugly head. So SRT is going to be normal. His UCL is going to be normal, probably around 100 dB. His MCL is going to be normal, around 50 to 60. So, so just realize that, okay? What's his tympanogram type's going to be? Type A, normal. It's got nothing wrong with the middle ear, just like presbycusis. He's going to have a type A tympanogram. Will he have acoustic reflexes? Yep, they'll be present. So all these things are going to look normal, 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 normal. Tympanograms will look normal. Word recognition, normal. All the speech tests, normal. His difficulty is subtle. All he has trouble hearing is shh. So always remember, and these guys are the hardest to fit with hearing aids. They are the hardest, people don't. Sometimes I'm kind of like, oh my God, because they can hear without the hearing aids. Okay, all the hearing aids are going to be delivering is, so the loudness of your voice, which is low frequency, isn't going to be increased with hearing aids because you're not going to increase low frequency gain for that person. You're not going to be giving them any more loudness, because loudness, when you raise your voice, what are you raising? Vowels. When I yell louder, I'm raising up the vowels. Ah, Paul, come over here. I'm not going, Paul, come over here. I'm not yelling the high frequencies, I'm yelling at the lows. So the benefits of amplification are going to be very subtle to this person. It's just, he's not going to hear you louder, but he's going to hear you clearer. So counseling is very important when you're talking about the benefits of hearing aids for noise-induced loss, because all they've lost is a little bit of hearing. Their hearing is kind of like this, just a little notch, a tiny little notch. These little fingers are gone. Everything else is fine. Okay, so they're the hardest people to fit with hearing aids because they can hear clearly without the hearing aids. Their difficulty is in noise. And guess what? Hearing aids work poorest in noise. What's the biggest complaint about hearing aids? Background noise. There's the riddle. There's the catch. Do you see the art in this field? How a clinician has to take factual stuff and piece it together. And that's really something to consider when you're talking about noise-induced hearing loss. Back to our notes. Coffee break's over. Back on our heads. All right, where were we now? Okay, get here to our notes. Okay, so you got all of this stuff. We've covered all of that. This is interesting. Hunters. So your audiometry is right here. Put a star by that. Remember that. That's going to be part and parcel of it. It's just good stuff to know. And what's interesting is is what hunters tend to have with noise-induced loss. So here is basically showing you photomicrographs of the 4,000 hertz region of the organ of Corti. So normal hair cells, damaged, right there, 4,000 hertz. Okay, just thought I'd tell you that. Don't worry about all this blah, 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 blah. This is just telling you about 3 different studies, 5 different studies, showing you where they came up with the noise levels that are tolerable to people. So the various different studies, don't think you have to memorize that. Just this ties in together with the fact of 85 dBA is usually the cutoff for 8 hours. And time of exposure and intensity are linked together. As the intensity goes up from 85 by 5, the allowed time of exposure goes down by half. Okay, and this is showing you where somebody might have said 8 hours at 90 dBA is the cutoff. Okay, some states that's the way it is, in some states it's 85. Nonetheless, basically just realize that the exposure and the allowed time of exposure, or the level and time of exposure, work together. Don't memorize this, never feel you have to do that. So this is showing you noise-induced hearing loss for female workers exposed longer and longer and longer to sound. Just from working in Dundee, Scotland. And you can see that the noise-induced notch growing larger over time. Okay, with increased exposure to the same factory noise, the notch at 4 kilohertz increases, lassies. Okay, now, basically combined influence of noise and age. Okay. Noise-induced hearing loss and presbycusis interact. Elderly males tend to have had more noise exposure on the job than females, especially in the days of yore. So elderly men may often show worse hearing in the high frequencies than elderly women. But elderly men may show better low-frequency hearing than elderly women, because elderly women are more susceptible to strial presbycusis, which is the blood supply to the cochlea, and that's going to affect all hair cells to an even extent. So in summary, men show better hearing in the lows and worse hearing in the highs, more of a whereas women tend to show more of a flatter sensory neural loss. Generalizing like crazy, just generalizing like crazy, but in general, generalizing in general. You dig? Good. All right, now where are we now? Let's keep going here or we'll lose. Oh yeah, look at this guy here. Here's noise-induced loss. Okay, look at the hair cell damage all along the basilar membrane, the apex of the cochlea to the base of the cochlea. Notice where the hair cells are damaged, right there at the notch. And then interestingly enough, from a hunter, a right-handed hunter. Now think about, look at the hair cell damage in the right ear isn't as bad as the left. And that should make perfect sense. As a hunter who's using a rifle, if I'm right-handed, I'm going to hold the rifle and my left ear will be more exposed. And my right ear will be protected by 10 pounds of ugly fat, known as my head. Okay? So left-handed hunters tend to show more of a right ear loss. Right-handed hunters tend to show more of a left ear loss. Just FYI, okay? Just food for thought. Share screen again. We got to keep moving or we won't get done this puppy here. So, all right, let's look at what else can we lie about. Oh, why don't we go to follow our notes down to the bottom, keep going. Sudden idiopathic deafness. Sudden idiopathic deafness, thank goodness, is rare. Okay? The person, usually an adult, wakes up in the morning with a ringing or feeling of fullness in one ear, and guess what? That ear is gone. Now, read what it says here. Often affects one ear with almost complete deafness. Onset of hearing loss, in other words, happens rapidly. It only accounts for like 1% of sensory neural loss or less. And only 10% of cases receive a formal diagnosis. This is why it is called idiopathic. We don't know. Autoimmune disorder, we don't know. Okay? Affects women and men equally. Some say it's a vasospasm of the internal auditory artery, like blood supply. Who knows? We just don't know. We just doo-dee-doo-doo. Anyway, here is the kicker. If you see someone coming to your office that has this, look at the second line here, steroids. If someone comes to an office like yours and reports sudden idiopathic deafness, send to a doctor immediately. Immediately. Like if you wait for several days after the loss has occurred, it's too late. Steroids won't help. If the person gets his butt into a doctor to get steroids, the hearing loss may come back. Okay, so this is the one thing. People tend to put it off. Oh, I just got an ear infection. If you take a case history quickly. Ear doesn't hurt. Nope, there's no pain. Doesn't hurt at all. Do a tympanogram. See if there's if there's any fluid in the ear, because that's what a tympanogram is going to show. Send to a doctor and say sudden idiopathic deafness. You've tested. It's sensory neural. Okay, you found out it's not conductive, it's sensory neural, it's not due to noise. Okay, all of that, you've taken a case history, send to the doctor immediately. An ENT may often take a referral straight from an HIS. Okay, because you are the red flag person. You're going, hey man, this could be a case of SID. Get it treated right away. Just thought I'd tell you. All right, moving on to our notes here. Let's look at. So don't think you have to sit there memorizing all of this stuff. I just look at or listen to what we're hearing on this Zoom session, and that's the depth at which I want people to know this stuff, okay? All right, look at the last line that it says here. Sometimes it's difficult to differentiate from Meniere's disease, our next pathology, Meniere's. So we've covered two of them today, noise-induced loss, sudden idiopathic deafness, which is rare. The notes on here are just FYI. You can just read that for yourselves, okay? We just don't know. That's why we call it idiopathic. Let's look at Meniere's. Meniere's is a disease you wouldn't want to wish on your worst enemy. Meniere's is brutal, okay? Let's look at what it is and what it does. The loss may look kind of like this, okay? It's one ear, not both. And it's weird because it's a rising hearing loss. It's a reverse sensory neural hearing loss. Most sensory neural losses are sloping, dropping in the highs. Trouble hearing treble, not Meniere's. Meniere's arises because of too much fluid in the scala media. And as you know, the scala media is the place that houses the hair cells. You have the scala vestibuli, scala media, scala tympani. Scala vestibuli and scala tympani are the bony labyrinths filled with perilymph. You remember this from 120 anatomy class. The scala media is the membranous labyrinth, and it's filled with endolymph. So what happens now, take a look at what's shown at the top of the screen here. Look at what I drew in orange. I laid the scala media along the top of the audiogram. And you can see that it's narrowest at the base, widest at the apex. Remember that? And you have one row of inner hair cells all along the length. And you have 3 rows of outer hair cells at the base, 4 rows of outer hair cells at the mids, and 5 rows of outer hair cells at the apex. And we said in anatomy class that highs stimulate the base. They make a traveling wave at the base of the cochlea, and I'll show you, oh, what was that? Here, right where my cursor is, this is where the wave of the traveling, the peak of the traveling wave will occur with high frequency sounds. How come? Because this area has less mass and is more stiff, and highs resonate stiffness. Low frequency stimulation creates a traveling wave at the apex of the cochlea. How come? Because the apex of the cochlea has more mass, the basilar membrane has more mass, the scala media is wider, and it's less stiff. Okay, so take those two things and now pump a bunch of extra pressure into that orange region. Where do you think it's going to bulge? Okay, I start shooting more fluid, more and more endolymph. We don't know the cause. Again, just idiopathic. We do not know why there is excess endolymph, but we do know it is episodic. And the person feels an aura, just like someone who has seizures can feel the aura coming. Oh no, I know I'm going to have a seizure. I gotta go home, or I gotta be somewhere safe. Okay, same with Meniere's. It'll come on like an aura, and the person, oh shit, I'm going to have an attack. And all of a sudden, three things happen. Roaring tinnitus, not high-pitched, roaring, like rotary vertigo, not dizziness, around, and you're puking your guts out on the floor, grabbing the carpet, dry heaves, and reverse hearing loss. And it'll last for several hours, and then it'll go away. And the sensory neural loss will get a bit better. And after several days or maybe a few weeks, another attack. Oh no, same thing happens. Now the sensory neural loss stays a little bit. And a third episode. And when it goes away, you've got a little more permanent sensory neural loss. And after the fourth and fifth, finally, and it takes about 5 years for the disease to run its course. And when it's done, you've got a permanent low frequency loss, and it might even be flat, but it's sensory neural. Why does it affect the lows more than the highs? Because when you add excess endolymph, where are the walls going to bulge? Where they are least stiff. Just like blowing into a balloon. Where's the bulge first going to appear? Wherever the walls are least stiff. And that's why, WHY, that's how come Meniere's is a rising reverse sensory neural loss. Now you are learning this the same way, actually probably even more so than the audiology grads from Missouri State in Springfield. Okay? You can ask an AUD audiologist, how come Meniere's is a rising loss? Why? And they'll say, well, you get excess endolymph in the scala media. Yeah, but why does it affect the lows more than the highs? And you'll get, well, it's not that I'm so smart. It bugged me, so I asked an ENT. Okay? And the ENT said, well, as you might have learned in anatomy, the scala media is less stiff toward the apex of the cochlea. It's less it's got more mass, but it's less stiff. So when you blow excess pressure, the bulging is going to bulge the walls that are less stiff. That's why Meniere's is a rising loss. Now, before we leave Meniere's, and we won't leave it now, I just wanted to go and look at our notes. And what does it say in our notes regarding Meniere's? This is a picture again, though, in PowerPoint showing how the scala media gets wider toward the apex of the cochlea. And all I did was lay that on top of the audiogram. Okay, so that orange comes from this yellow here. Isn't that precious? Also shown here. Okay, here's the scala media. Notice how it gets bigger and bigger toward the apex of the cochlea. The walls get larger. There's more mass, but the walls are also less stiff. The walls at the base are very stiff. The walls here are less stiff. And there's more mass. Just FYI. Okay. So now that before we go to this slide, let's leave our PowerPoint alone, look at our notes and what does it say about Meniere's. Sudden paroxysmal means episodic. So look at this right here. Okay? Symptoms of vertigo, sensory neural loss, and tinnitus. Usually unilateral. Bilateral, only a few cases. Sometimes it'll hit one ear, and then several years later, it might hit the other ear. But usually it's a unilateral loss. Client reports a full feeling in the ear, low frequency roaring tinnitus with hearing loss, difficulty understanding speech, rotary vertigo, extremely handicapping. Has exacerbations and remissions. Look at the way I spelled exacerbations. I spelled it wrong. Exacerbatrions. Yeah, Ted, smoke another one. Anyway, caused by endolymphatic hydrops, over-secretion or under-absorption of endolymph. So too much pressure causes the symptoms. Okay? So now we can don't worry about all this stuff here. You can read that for your own information, okay? Sometimes a test used to diagnose Meniere's is the glycerol test. Glycerol is a diuretic. It makes you pee, okay? And a doctor gives you glycerol, and what that does is it gets rid of bodily fluids, and if the glycerol reduces the symptoms, that's a positive diagnosis for Meniere's disease. So when you hear about a glycerol test, realize, oh, they were testing for Meniere's. Anyway, diuretics, treatment, diuretics, reduced sodium intake, tranquilizers, vestibular suppressants. Sometimes they do surgery to decompress the endolymphatic sac. Sometimes they put in a shunt to drain excess endolymph fluid. Okay? Yikes. Sometimes a labyrinthectomy. Look at that last one. A labyrinthectomy. Read what that word, labyrinth, cochlea, balance organs, ectomy, get it out. So now you're deaf in that ear. Oh well, better that than the Meniere's. Some people, you know what I'm saying? So that's why it's not a disease that has most unpleasant symptoms. I will close on this particular topic with this. Not all, okay, there's a word called endolymphatic hydrops. So jot this down in your notes by Meniere's. Endolymphatic hydrops. Endolymphatic hydrops. That means too much endolymph. Okay? Now that causes Meniere's, right? But not all endolymphatic hydrops has all three symptoms. Sometimes people might have the dizziness and the hearing loss, but not the rotary vertigo. Sometimes people have the rotary vertigo and the hearing loss, but not the tinnitus. Okay? Classic Meniere's has all three symptoms. So look at it this way. I'll draw a circle here, and I'll draw another one inside. Meniere's and endolymphatic hydrops. Okay? All Meniere's is endolymphatic hydrops, but not all endolymphatic hydrops is Meniere's. Okay? Endolymphatic hydrops means too much fluid in the cochlea, and you might have two out of the three symptoms, but classic Meniere's is a subset of endolymphatic hydrops that has all three symptoms. Rotary vertigo, episodic low frequency loss, and roaring tinnitus. Okay, very, very good. Very nice. Isn't that special? Now let's look at our notes and see where we've come. All right, look where we are. Far out. We are moving along. Audiogram for Meniere's. Flat or rising. Usually it begins as a rising, and it may eventually evolve to a flat. Moderate in degree, so please realize it's not going to make you deaf. It just causes a moderate sensory neural loss. And the reason for the audiogram, basilar membrane has more mass with less stiffness at the apex. As a result, excessive endolymph affects that area most. Speech discrimination isn't bad. It's fair. Tympanometry, Jerger type A, because they don't have any pathology of the middle ear, maybe reduced static compliance. Now look where it says static compliance, and if you will remember with static compliance, let's just show you what that looks like on your PowerPoints here. Not to freak, it's right here. Where are we? Come on, there we go. Up, 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 up. Here you go. Here's some tips. Okay, type A. Static compliance just means the height of your tympanogram. That's all it means. Okay, how tall was your pup tent? Type A, you can see the peak over 0. Type C, early otitis media. Type C turning into a type B. Type B, advanced otitis media. Meniere's has no middle ear pathology, so they'll have a type A tympanogram. Presbycusis, type A tympanogram. Noise-induced loss, type A tympanogram. They have no pathology of the middle ear. However, you might, with Meniere's, have a slightly smaller type A. It might be like a type AS, the kind you'd see with otosclerosis. The peak is over normal air pressure. It's just sort of reduced in height. And why did we say that might be the case? Maybe because of excessive fluid in the cochlea. So you might have an artificially stiff movement that way. Okay, but whatever, don't freak. Essentially type A. Acoustic reflexes will be present, consistent with a lot of other sensory neural loss because they don't have middle ear pathology. Okay, now head trauma. So we're done Meniere's, we'll leave it alone. Okay, don't freak about the whole glycerol test, but if somebody mentions glycerol, it's probably done a test for Meniere's, and you can read your notes. Okay, it's just there, but I'm not going to freak about it. Okay, head trauma. Audiogram may end up looking like noise-induced loss. I don't know why, but you might have, somebody in a fight outside of a bar gets a whoop upside the head, whatever, yikes. Acoustic trauma, diving accidents may cause round or oval windows to pop. Paralymph fluid might leak into the middle ear, yikes. Okay, audiogram, if TM and middle ear may be damaged due to head trauma, but if the fracture crosses the cochlea, you've cracked the cochlea, now you're deaf. Okay, now the fluids of, you've busted the cochlea, so you'll be deaf in that ear. But it may, you might just have it that you've popped one of the oval or round windows. You're going to have a problem, but it may resolve itself, but yikes. Rare, okay, but just realize head trauma can cause hearing loss, either of the middle ear due to damage of the ossicles, but maybe to the inner ear because you've cracked the cochlea. That's common sense. Don't get into fights like that. You can get hurt. Okay, now this last one is very, very esoteric, but it's important. I want to cover it, because I want you to know really just how wonderful the cochlea is and what a trip that organ really is. It's unreal. Look at this picture. This is a picture of a cochlear dead region. Here's a cochlea, living eighth nerve fibers, dead eighth nerve fibers. So all the hair cells are dead here, and all of a sudden things are living here. And this is basically showing you eighth nerve fibers coming out from the inner hair cells. But enough on, don't worry about it. Look at where the death started. So this person is going to have normal hearing in the lows and complete deafness in the highs. What would happen if this was reversed? What would happen if this was alive and this was dead? What would happen there? Well, let's kind of look at this. You'd end up with this hearing loss. Now, I'm going to just pretend. Let's say like a thief in the night. And I'm going to pick on Sam because he's always fun to pick on because I can see his name appearing here. Like a thief in the night, I came in and put chloroform on his face and put him out. And then with microsurgery, I went in and killed off every hair cell in his right ear below 1,000 hertz. So not only the outers, but all the inners, with the tweezers, just pulled them all out. So he was left with normal hair cells above 1,000 hertz and no hair cells below 1,000 hertz. If we gave Sam a test in the morning, his hearing loss would look like this. It wouldn't be down at the bottom. You'd think his thresholds would be here where my cursor is, and then all of a sudden normal. But you know why they would look like this? Because if I stimulated a 250 hertz tone in his dead, so everything below 1,000 hertz is dead. If I put a tone in his dead area, I'm making a traveling wave. So look at this line here. This black line is the unrolled basilar membrane. All I've done was taken the cochlea, which is 2.5 centimeters long or 1 inch in length, coiled, uncoiled it, and rolled out that basilar membrane and laid it across the audiogram. So all the hair cells, from high frequency to mids to lows, okay? But let's say in Sam's ear, I killed off all the lows. So only the hair cells from my elbow to the shoulder are surviving. All of these hair cells are dead. Okay, so if we tested him in the morning, his audiogram would look like a mild to moderate reverse loss. Reason? Because if I stimulated a 250 hertz tone, the peak of the wave is here, but the tail of the traveling wave is stimulating healthy hair cells. He's going to raise his hand. He is hearing, in quotes, 250 hertz with mid-frequency hair cells. Okay, weird. So when you've got a reverse hearing loss like this, you have to rule out, is it Meniere's? Yep, don't have any problem. I was born, I've never had any problems with my ears. No, doesn't hurt. Never had dizziness. Don't have roaring in the ear. Just, it may be that the person genetically has this, but it's audiological checkmate. You won't get the thresholds at the bottom. So you don't really know if these are real. You don't know. So what you should do is play a tone, play a 250 hertz tone into this ear and ask the client, what does it sound like? Does that sound good? And if the person says, yeah, I can hear it, sounds like a good. You can try fitting with hearing aids. But guess what? Hearing aids pick up background noise. And most background noise is low frequency. So you're going to be amplifying low frequencies. And the guy's going to hear lots of background noise. Okay? So this may be a very unsuccessful fitting. These losses are also difficult to fit with hearing aids. But it may be that the guy's deaf in the low frequencies. Maybe when I played this 250 hertz tone at around 50, the guy said, yeah, I can hear something, but it sounds awful. Sounds like I almost feel like I can feel it. Or then it may very well be that the guy's deaf at the low frequencies. But always remember, the thresholds are going to look like this, because when I present a low frequency tone at a fair intensity, the tail of the traveling wave is going to stimulate his high mid-frequency hair cells, and he's going to raise his hand. It's really weird. Look at this.
Can I just ask, is that related? That's the upward spread of masking?
Correct. Right? It's the upward spread of masking. Exactly. Same crap, same, different picture, but yep, exactly. Very good question, Audra, because when you're looking here, okay, you have a low frequency truck, blah, 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 and a high frequency canary peeping in your kitchen. The blah, 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 blah of the truck, look at the shape of the wave. It's asymmetrical. It's like a kite. It has a steep front, long tail. So if the truck is rumbling loud, it's going to mask or cover the high frequency peeping of the canary. But it doesn't work the other way around. You can have the soft rumbling of a truck And you can have Miss Harry Canary peeping away in the kitchen, beep, 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 all she wants. But guess what? This wave isn't going to come out here. So lows mask highs better than highs mask lows. It's called the upward spread of masking. And it is the reason for the season of the rising low frequency loss that will occur even if the hair cells are totally dead in the lows. The loss is going to look like this. That's why be very suspicious with low frequency losses. You've got to rule out Meniere's, but other than that, you know, if the guy's got this in both ears, it may very well be that he is just genetically born that way. Now look at high frequency dead areas. Let's turn the nightmare around. Let's say I went into Sam's house the next night, put him out, and in his other ear, I took out every hair cell in the high frequencies. And I left the low frequency hair cells alone. Test them in the morning, the loss is going to look more like you'd think. Okay? But again, it's because of the shape of the wave. Look, if I stimulate 2,000 hertz at a high intensity, the front of the wave will stimulate low frequency hair cells, and he's going to raise his hand. But notice that the further and further I go into the dead area, I have to make the tone dramatically louder in order for the front of the wave to still stimulate the low frequency hair cells. And again, it's because of the shape of the wave in a weird and majestic way. This shape of the loss is like a photograph of the traveling wave envelope. It literally is. It's like, so a high frequency dead region will look more like you'd think it would. It will be a precipitous high frequency loss because of the shape of the wave. If I stimulate here at 1,000, okay, I got to make it this much for the front of the wave to stimulate these hair cells. If I stimulate at 1,500, I had to make it way more intense for the front of the wave to stimulate healthy low frequency cells. If I test at 2,000, I have to make it way more intense for the front of that wave to still stay there. So you can realize here that cochlear physiology is really quite interesting. And I'm going to stop right there, okay, with no more on the inner ear, but I will say this. You can rest assured that IHS grads are not learning this. This is audiology. This is AUD material that I am cramming in to OTC's disorders on purpose, deliberately, because I want you to flip them out by what you know. Literally, that's what I'm trying to do. It's my weird, evil mission. I would love to see OTC grads just shine. So when you guys are out there, you'll know things that will blow the mind off the trapdoor of an audiologist with a closed mind. Saying, you know what, in a 2-year college diploma or degree, my AAS degree, we learned a lot of theory and reasons why. Not just that's what you get, but how come? So you've learned that with noise-induced loss, why the shape? Meniere's disease, why the shape? Cochlear dead regions in the lows versus cochlear dead regions in the highs. And what causes cochlear dead regions? Could be genetics, but it could also be constant exposure to noise-induced loss. Maybe noise, you saw that notch at 4,000 hertz. Maybe you killed everything off in the high frequencies. And that's a cause then of cochlear high frequency dead spots. So let me just say this to you. If you were running into this guy with hearing aids, don't try and fit these thresholds. Okay? Aim for the transition. Try to fit the transition. Let's see if I can show a picture, if I've got a picture. Here's a cookie bite loss. This is genetic. This might be they are fairly rare, but these frequencies in the middle could be due to a cochlear dead region. What I'm trying to say here is it's best often to try and fit the transition right here. See where my cursor is? Confine your amplification to here. You can help the dying but you can't help the dead. Don't chase after these thresholds, okay? All you're going to get is excessive feedback and whistling in the hearing aid. Aim for the transition. In this loss, aim between 500 and 2,000. In this loss here, don't fit the worst. Fit the transition. Try to fit where the hair cells are damaged, but not in the depths of the dead regions. Fit the transitions. Okay, it's just kind of words to the wise. You may find it very helpful to look at that kind of thing. So this may be a combination of you know, this person here might have a cochlear dead region in the very center. Don't aim all of your amplification at 1,000. Aim the sides, and you can do that with digital hearing aids today. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant with digital hearing aids today. Here's a left corner audiogram. Obviously both inner and outer hair cell damage. This guy's going to hear like this. That's all he's got. Okay, these hair cells are dead. They're not going to, don't amplify them. All you can do is amplify this. And he's never going to hear the letter S. He's never going to hear the letters SH, F, CH. They're gone for good. That's why this person here, when he's talking to you, you could often hear how he talked kind of like this. He had that kind of depth speak because he's never heard the letter S. Okay? So that's why people that left corner audiogram, they have that kind of speech. They talk like that. Okay? Well, you're going to hear them. They're going to come into your office and you're going to remember this talk. Okay? They're going to have full soft shell ear molds, number 13 tubing, large BTEs, left corner audiograms. Again, genetic, maybe mom had rubella, German measles, baby was born with that kind of hearing loss. It happens, okay? And what happens today is we often use frequency transposition hearing aids. Hearing aids that take the highs and they shift them over to the lows. It's called frequency transposition. Write that down. Frequency transposition. And that's a hearing aids, and almost all manufacturers provide this now. Sometimes it's called high frequency compression, but frequency transposing. They're taking the highs and they're literally shifting them down to the lows so that the guy can hear the lows. And it may then be that if you had those hearing aids on that person and you had him stand 5 feet in front of you with his back to you, and you said, I want you to tell me if the sounds are different or the same. And the person would say, same. Different. And you think, how's that possible? The guy can't hear any high frequencies. Well, it's because the frequencies are being transposed to the lows. And a hearing aid, if you listen to it, the hearing aid might sound like Darth Vader. Okay, but really what's happening is the high frequencies are being transposed to the lows. You'll learn more about that in more of your advanced courses. I'm just giving you a what do you call it? Something, just kind of a first thing as to what you're going to run into later on. And you know what? It's the way the universe often teaches us. When you hear about something once, you're going to hear about it again. But just for the fun of it, Google up frequency transposition and boom, you'll see exactly what I mean. They'll be talking about the left corner audiogram. Enough on that. It's time for me to shut my face. We have done 4 Zoom sessions. We've got about 3 more to go. And then you have your final exam in week 8. So next week and the week after, retrocochlear pathology, and week 7, pseudohypoacusis, and then we be done. That's the sign language for finished. Finished. Okay. All right. We took a long, what do they call it in sign language? A long time to do this Zoom session. Adios. See you when we look at you, okay?
Thank you, Dr. Ted.
Hey, ciao for now. I'll say stop recording here, and we'll see you when we look at you.